People have been asking me the past few months if my channel has turned a corner into LEGO and away from action figures. While the answer to that is a confident no, my decisions about my pursuits in the area of Indiana Jones toys have most certainly turned a corner. In 2008, when we had the choice between the Hasbro figure line and the LEGO sets, I chose the Hasbro route. Call it old habit, but my memories of the Kenner series and being a 1980s kid kept my vision for Indiana Jones toys rooted in traditional action figures, vehicles, and playsets. Ultimately, both Hasbro and LEGO would make admirable attempts at world-building Indiana Jones, but also fall short of the finish line. With Hasbro's 2023 Indiana Jones announcement, they foist upon us yet another spate of 6-inch figures, making vehicles and playsets expensive and very unlikely. LEGO's more reserved rollout at the same time made it obvious to me a true world build for Indiana Jones in toy form would never be given the same attention as Star Wars. I stepped back and looked at the options. In figure form, such a feat would require customization on a grand scale, and the end results for the vehicles and playsets would be dioramas rather than durable toys. On the other hand, LEGO had the advantage of being a build system with a rabidly active community of fan creators. LEGO had also been more courageous in 2008 with Indiana Jones, being the only toy company in the franchise's history to make a flying wing that worked with figures, and the only company to ever make a Temple of Doom as well. As it was obvious I'd have to build the dream Indiana Jones toy line myself, I might as well commit my efforts to achieving this with LEGO, where building is what the toys are made to do, and the community is already filling some gaps. But only if I could guarantee a specific vehicle was doable.
Got a tank. 6-pound gun.
It was 2008, and two toy companies were in the Indiana Jones game. Hasbro made the better cargo truck, and LEGO made the only flying wing, but nobody dared to make the tank from Last Crusade. Hasbro mocked up part of it in cardstock inside a window box, and before that, it had been made a few times as a standalone toy vehicle in a small scale. But as for a purpose-built toy to work with figures of some kind, there was nothing doing. The tank sequence in Last Crusade is easily the most memorable part of the film for me, and the closest any Indiana Jones sequel gets to recapturing the feel of Raiders of the Lost Ark. I freely admit I seem to have had a fixation on this tank since I first saw the film in 1989. So much so, the first thing I did in the Imperial War Museum when I saw the World War I tank was get a photo recreating Indy's desperate struggle on the side cannon. And before you come at me in the comments, in 1990, the atrium of the Imperial War Museum where this photo was taken had a series of standing vehicles and artillery with no guardrails around them that the public was welcome to interact with, including this tank. In fact, the cannon barrel on this is a wooden replacement, so cool your jets. I also made sure to get a photo with the actual tank from the film in 1994, when we visited MGM Studios to see the Indiana Jones Stunt Spectacular. The tank was essential if an Indiana Jones toy range was to feel complete, as essential as the flying wing, which LEGO had already provided. Fortunately, on Rebrickable, a site dedicated to independent LEGO designs, while looking for plans for a custom build of Timothy Dalton's Aston Martin from The Living Daylights, I found an impressive build from TMS95 of the tank from Last Crusade. Originally, I'd planned to limit my LEGO Indiana Jones aspirations to Raiders of the Lost Ark. However, the moment I saw this tank design, I knew a complete Indiana Jones toy range representing the original 3 films was finally within reach, especially given how nicely my expanded Well of Souls turned out. TMS95's build required a lot of parts. A lot. My Bricklink build became a little ridiculous in the short term as parts came in from all over the place. One pair of pieces coming from as far as Austria.
Oh, he's in Austria. The slight detour.
Another set of parts never arrived, and honestly, this is the problem with LEGO, especially when you're trying to make independent designs. Parts gathering is tedious, and gets expensive with shipping costs from scores of different LEGO sellers. Plus, I've never had a Bricklink auto-generated parts list that didn't mysteriously leave a few parts out of the checkout carts. A frustration you won't be aware of until you think you have all the parts in hand, and you start building only to learn some of those parts never made it into the final purchase purchase carts. So between the parts that never arrived wholesale because they were lost in the mail, and the parts that never arrived because Bricklink's want list system is far from airtight, I was continually reminded of why I've never been a Lego person. New orders were placed with new sellers, more parts were ordered than needed out of frustration not having the right parts or right amount of parts due to Bricklink's tomfoolery, and over the next few weeks, bags and bags of parts for the Last Crusade tank started to form a virtual mountain of tan plastic. How big would this thing be? It seemed like it couldn't possibly need this many parts. Barring the starts and stops when I made those painful discoveries of missing pieces, I managed to complete the tank in a few evenings, and the process was a real treat by and large. The build seemed a little unstable in the opening stages, and I wasn't sure about the designer's overall game plan, but within the first 20 steps, I could tell the end result would be a very solid and sturdy Lego vehicle. There were areas of the instructions in the front of the tank around the buildup of the side turrets where I wanted to pull my hair out, as I felt the order of placement for the parts wasn't always possible. Specifically the areas where bricks needed to be laid on their sides. I felt these steps came about 15 pages too late.
No! This one goes there, that one goes there, right?
For a few pages there, I had to deconstruct the front quarters of the tank I'd already built, drop in those parts, and rebuild those sections around the added parts before being able to continue.
This is intolerable!
The only other area where I was slightly crestfallen, but certainly understood the need for the compromise, was in the height of the interior of the tank. The minifigures couldn't quite stand up with the top of the tank placed over the compartment. However, this was completely understandable, as otherwise the tank would be ridiculously large overall to maintain its general proportions. Within hours of my completion of the tank, TMS-95 sent out a notification to all of the people who'd bought his instructions on Rebrickable that he'd just uploaded a completed, revised set of instructions for a version 2 of the tank build that was even more accurate.
What?
I told myself it was likely a series of small revisions of areas and some added details. As the new instructions were free for anyone who purchased the original design, I felt there was no harm in looking at the new plans. My assumptions were completely wrong. From page 1, it was obvious this was a total revision of the entire build from the ground up. Part counts were different, many part styles had changed, new parts were needed, and that meant another round of orders on Rebrickable. The added frustration this time is that the additional parts list had to be documented by hand, because I already had a lot of parts in this version 2 list from the version 1 tank, and I didn't want to rebuy a lot of those parts. Plus, I'd just gotten the tank completed, and now I'd have to tear the entire build back down to the ground and rebuild it all over again for the second time in the same month.
Oh, shit.
More parts arrived, and I started over, unable to avoid the inevitable missing pieces here and there that hadn't been added to the additional orders for one reason or another. That meant more starts and stops as I tried to stay patient with the Lego process. The version 2 build was far more intuitive in the opening stages compared with the first version. That said, it was with some sadness that a number of harder to find parts from the first version were replaced entirely with alternate pieces, mainly because I'd just bought them, not because the new parts didn't look better. They certainly did. Thankfully, those parts from Austria were reused, a small blessing. I could instantly tell the new build was worth the immediate redo on the project. Exterior details were more securely placed, and the overall vehicle was longer, giving it a much closer appearance to the tank on screen. Even with all the improvements and revisions, that front end around the side turrets and forward tread gears was as baffling a build order as before. Parts I feel needed to be added many steps prior were being thrown into the construction at stages where the bricks simply could not be installed, requiring whole section teardowns as before. But don't misunderstand me. TMS-95's design is Loctite. It's simply the order of part placement in these areas that doesn't make much sense. Once you work out those riddles and get the parts where TMS-95 shows you they need to be, the build is rock solid. In addition to the obvious details like the correct profile of the British Mark 8 tank that inspired the vehicle built for Last Crusade, as well as the working treads and a fully rotating turret, TMS-95's design also incorporates features of the tank that are easily overlooked. such as the wooden catcher and chains at the front of the tank, the shovels attached to the sides of the turret, the opening side hatches, and the bundles of equipment along the sides and rear surfaces of the vehicle, including the coils of barbed wire at the back of the tank. However, as impressive as the attention to detail on the exterior is, it's the LEGO-style features underneath the surface that really make this design sing. For one, there's an opening engine compartment to get at the guts of the tank for repair or sabotage. A working periscope with accompanying access hatch provides even more playability, as does the simulated turret hatch that accommodates a minifigure. The main event, though, is the passenger interior, accessed by removing the roof and turret all in one section. What is revealed is a true LEGO detailed interior with storage containers for cannon shells, small arms ammo, and weapons, and more. To enhance this interior, I made sure to acquire LEGO German troops from the 2008 Indiana Jones range, outfit them with accurate caps and pistols from Brickmania's excellent website, and then I cobbled together a tank driver, complete with mustache, a stand-in for Colonel Vogel, and Marcus Brody. But the combo would never be complete without Indiana Jones on a black horse with his Webley revolver, also acquired through Brickmania. With the completion of this tank, I am one crucial step closer to the end of a multi-decade quest to have a fully realized toy range for the 1980s Indiana Jones films. But there was still one more cosmic surprise. I finished the second version of TMS 95's incredible design a few days before JoeFest 2023. And when I arrived in Augusta, a guy named Jeremy approached me to introduce himself. In that moment, he handed me a specially constructed small crate, and mounted inside was a small piece of something. That's when he revealed he was the guy tasked with scrapping the stunt tank, which was the second tank built for Last Crusade, and different from the hero version now displayed at Disney World. The stunt tank was outfitted with rubber treads to allow them to safely press Harrison Ford's face into them, and let Sean Connery body surf on them without being injured. When he scrapped the tank, Jeremy kept a few pieces, and to my shock, he was gifting me one of the tread fragments. I never thought I would own an actual piece from one of the classic Indiana Jones films, and never expected to have it put into my hands only days after finishing that very tank in LEGO form. As much as I have asserted that I find Raiders of the Lost Ark and Temple of Doom to take the number 1 and 2 slots respectively for best Indiana Jones films, I have a very healthy respect for Last Crusade, and many fond memories. Before my mom took me to see Last Crusade in the summer of 1989, she surprised me with one of the official Indiana Jones hats being sold in retail stores that summer. I wore it to the theater, all over the UK, and I still have it to this day. It only feels right somehow that this hat, the tank fragment, the amazing handcrafted recreation of the Grail Diary gifted to me by my friend Prime Syndicate, and the LEGO tank be displayed together. Because as much as Raiders of the Lost Ark captivated me years before Last Crusade, it was the summer of Indy's third adventure where I was given my own hat and realized I might have the adventure of my own life, keeping up with the Joneses.